Happy feast day of St. Catherine to everybody. So I just wanted to pop on here quickly. Sometimes I would have loved to have written something, but sometimes videos are just faster, and honestly I'm probably better at talking than I am at writing. But anyway, so St. Catherine, I love St. Catherine. Though I learned something new today, that she wasn't a nun. I mean, her outfit looks like she's a nun every time we see her in her pictures, and she wasn't married. She was part of like a third order. And if you don't know what that is, you could ask in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer that question, or I'll point you to someone else who can do a better job than me. But basically, she was a single holy woman. My spiritual director had given me a book on her when him and I first started meeting, and I instantly fell in love. She's a bit intense for me. She lived on just communion, Eucharist, for like years. And she did some crazy things. But one of the things that really spoke to my heart is her intense love for humanity, her understanding of God's goodness and us being his masterpiece. Now there's this crazy story which may seem totally bizarre, but it very much convicted me, because she is serving the sick, and there was this one lady that I guess was like really grumpy and nobody really wanted to care for her. But she was suffering. That was probably part of the reason she was so grumpy, was because it's hard to be happy when we just feel horrible. She had all these sores on her, and one day St. Catherine was feeling really tempted that Satan was trying to make her not want to love this woman or not want to serve this woman, and be completely disgusted by the fact that she was mean and the fact that she smelled bad and looked ugly and all these things. So it's a little bit like, I don't know if I'd ever do this, but to the point where Catherine's like, well, whatever, I'm going to make myself so accustomed to the smell that it doesn't bother me anymore. It doesn't make me sick. So she ate part of this woman's pus, which sounds gross and maybe a little bit not necessary. But at the same time, it's like, what are we willing to do in order to love someone? Our culture does not tell us that everybody is loved and lovable. Even if the culture is trying to, we're trying to have this idea of tolerance and acceptance, but yet there's still this beauty standard. You cannot be accepted unless you're good at this, unless you're good looking, unless you're beautiful. But we should be accepted and loved simply because we exist. And the things that disgust us shouldn't disgust us. We're repelled by people because they smell, or because they're ugly, whatever that means. I mean, like, no one is really ugly if we had the eyes to see. We would be able to smell the fragrance of God. Yes, I know there's sin and I know there's brokenness, but we should be drawn to these people to love them, especially the poor. I mean, and not just, there's physical poverty, but there's mental poverty, emotional poverty. Some people do not have the capacity to love in return, but they are still worth loving. Some people do not have the capacity they can't seem to break free from their addictions, but they're still worth loving. And why are we so, even as Christians, we sit in our little Christian bubbles, we're all clean, we're all showered, we're all happy, we all smell good, we've got this and that, and we're content there, but we're disgusted by the homeless person. This is one thing I learned in India, taking people who are dying off the streets, who are getting eaten alive by bugs. I mean, we should be drawn to these people. That's Christ crucified. Christ crucified is not pretty. But yet Jesus calls us to himself that way. And to see in the least of these him, the prisoner, the starving, the sick. Those things aren't pretty, but they sure are beautiful. If we only had the eyes to see. Every person we encounter should be a masterpiece of beauty. It's not makeup that makes us beautiful. It's not flowers. It's not clothes. It's not this. We make those things beautiful. We are the ones. And I'm guilty of this. I'm so guilty of this. So God, change our hearts. Help us to not be disgusted by anyone. Yes, be disgusted by sin. Yes, want to clean them up, but not for the sake of so we can tolerate them, but the sake because they have dignity and they are worth it. Just like they were worth you dying for. Jesus, help us. And St. Catherine of Siena, pray for us. God bless.